Now, you've written many books, and you also write for like New York Times, New York Post, Daily Mail.
You say that he told you he was shocked that he was arrested. How so and why?
Well, quite frankly, I've never seen anything like this. You know, reporters always have to dig to get stories, but this has been a deliberate attempt to keep the facts constrained. Uh, and I don't know why.
And so it is with the vicious and senseless murders that Bryan Kohberger admits that he committed in Moscow, Idaho.
Kohberger is locked in his own armory of hate, his own irrational state. If she had spoken, if she had cried out, if she had said, "Who are you? What are you doing here? What's going on?" Any word, I think that would have pulled him out of the state he was in, and she too would have become another victim.
All right, we are joined today by Howard Blum, who is not only a Pulitzer Prize nominee, he has a current New York Times bestseller, which paperback has just come out, When Night Comes Falling, the definitive true crime investigation into the Idaho student murders. There's a link down below if you want to buy it right now from Amazon. I'm sure it'll help him out, especially he has a new afterword in it. How are you doing today, Howard?
Good, thank you.
I'm really happy to have you, and I was curious about the Kohberger murders or Idaho murders. I don't even know what to say anymore because his trial was coming up pretty soon. And I actually have a legal panel that I do almost every Friday. And there were some questions in the community whether the case was solid or not, whether the defense might have something going. But things have taken a bit of a radical turn.
Drama in court as Bryan Kohberger pleads guilty to stabbing 4 University of Idaho students to death.
And he wound up taking a plea. But I'd like to go back to your book and early interviews. Like, I think the first interview I saw of you, you said that you think he probably was the guy, but there were some bad facts that were going to be a challenge to the case.
Well, what I've said all along, as I believe, not probably, I believed he was the guy, and that he was guilty. However, I thought for a while there, the defense would be able to raise enough questions to put reasonable doubt in the minds of a jury. For example, he was identified by a bit of DNA that was left on a knife sheath he left behind on the night of the crime. The defense was going to say, this is their big argument, that this knife sheath DNA was indeed Kohberger's. However, it was left by someone else. He was the patsy. He was set up for this crime. And they pointed out to, and this I thought might have been compelling to a jury, that there were 2 unidentified bits of male DNA in the house. One on a stairwell guiding handle, a rail handle, and another on a glove just outside the residence. And these were never identified. And the defense, Kohberger's team, had thought that they would introduce this at the trial to raise doubts. Then there was also the cell phone triangulation. They could put Kohberger's cell phone 23 times within 100 meters of the house where the murders occurred. And that happened during the months before the murders, just at nighttime. That would be introduced to say he was stalking these poor kids. However, 100 meters is a lot of territory and covers a lot of houses in a small town like Moscow, Idaho. Then they had the camera surveillance videos that showed a white car, a white Hyundai Elantra, circling the area 3 times before the murder, and then after the murders going off at high speed. But in all those videos, there wasn't one picture of the man behind the wheel of the car, and there wasn't one picture of the license plate. And presumably there are a lot of white cars in Idaho. And this was a case where the death penalty was going to be, if he were convicted, was going to be inflicted by a firing squad. That was what is required by Idaho law. So that might have given people in the jury perhaps some pause, and there was enough doubts there to wonder, can we go forward and convict this guy, put him in front of a firing squad?
The sheath, I know there was controversy because I think it's called touch DNA, which is like a lower grade one. But it had to be compelling because was it not found underneath one of the victims? Like, how does your sheath with your DNA that you ordered from Walmart or sorry, Amazon at one point get under that victim? That's kind of a stretch.
Yes, not only is it his DNA on the button snap of the knife sheath, but the DNA on the button snap of the knife sheath matches 100% to a cheek swab that was taken from Kohberger after his arrest. And here's what the Kohberger team was going to say. Yeah, we admit that was his DNA. However, the question is, how did the knife sheath get there? And we're saying that Kohberger didn't put it there. The real killers put it there. They had taken this knife sheath from Kohberger, who had bought, they concede, this knife sheath on Amazon, and he was just a patsy. He was set up for the crime. It's a bit of a stretch, but that's what they were prepared to argue. It was interesting that just 2 weeks before the settlement, that possibility, the possibility of alternate perpetrators, was examined by the judge in detail. They presented 4 names of people that they said these people could be the killers. And the judge looked at that and said, that's not evidence, that's speculation. I'm not allowing you to admit it. So he threw out that possibility.
Now, the defense for Bryan Kohberger, who is accused of killing Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Madison Mogen in November of 2022, has argued their client is innocent, and with his life on the line, they wanted more time. But the judge also denying a request from the defense to present theories of 4 alternate killers to the jury. The judge calling their evidence entirely irrelevant and wild speculation.
All right, so let's go back in time, and I'd like to learn who Bryan Kohberger is. You wrote in the book, I mean, a lot of stuff. My mind was blown. I had no idea. I just assumed that he was a kid who had problems, who grew up. I did not realize, like you wrote about, he was an addict, I guess a pretty severe one, with both heroin and food, I guess, technically, and gained a lot of weight, had surgery. Can we go into this guy?
What strikes me is so interesting about Kohberger's life, he grows up in a very hard-scrabble neighborhood in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. His father, who is a maintenance man, a custodial engineer at the school where he's going to high school, goes bankrupt twice. Kohberger gets into a sort of community college program, and he's a heroin addict. He's 125 pounds overweight. And yet, to his credit, this is what's so amazing. Kohberger finds the will and the discipline to kick heroin. How many people do that? To lose 125 pounds. How many people do that? It turns his body into a fortress. He works out and becomes a vegan. He gets out of, after 2 years at this community college, he's able to get into a distinguished 4-year college, DeSalle University, and then go on to graduate school. He is at the process of reinventing himself, turning his life all around. He is going to be Professor Kohberger if he gets his doctorate, perhaps. And yet, biology is in some ways destiny. He cannot prevent his being sort of this outsider in the world. He grew up feeling an outsider. Despite his ability to change some factors in his life, I believe he always saw himself as an outsider, someone on the periphery of events, someone who can't fit in, and that ultimately led him to act in an irrational way to try to compensate for all his failings.
Yeah, he seems really odd. I mean, like, he's both a genius and an idiot.
I wouldn't
don't know
say
if
he's
that
a
makes sense.
genius, but I mean, his
Yes.
IQ was given at the trial. I think it was 108 or approximately.
Okay.
That's
So intelligent.
not quite a genius. I mean, he did well. He had autistic. He was on the spectrum. His lawyers presented evidence talking about his autistic spectrum behavior. He's a little weird. He also suffered at one point during his teenage years from a condition called visual snow. That is, and doctors debate this, whether that is a psychological condition or it's a physiological condition. But the reality is that you sort of look at the world as if you were looking through a test pattern on a TV screen. It's always blurry, and that causes him. He writes about this in great detail on a teenage post he makes. How he feels like a piece of meat. He feels remorseless. He can't relate to anyone. He creates a song that he sings on the internet. I am the devil. I'm going to wreak vengeance. He has a lot of serious problems, and at the same time, he's trying to transcend them, to fit into society and to become this criminal justice student who can earn a doctorate.
Yeah, which is a remarkable thing. Now he went to and study under Kathleen. Is it Catherine Ramsland?
I met him in the fall of 2018 when he came to DeSales University. He had an associate's degree, and he was going to get into our 4-year program as a psychology major. He selected the forensic track, which made him an advisee for me because I managed the forensic track. And he was also in my class that semester.
Why did he leave that program to go to Washington State when it wasn't her program top of the field?
Well, that was her program was largely forensic psychology. He wanted to specialize in forensic psychology and get into criminal justice student who can earn a doctorate. The State University not only accepted him, it was a distinguished program, arguably better ranked academically than DeSales, but they also awarded him a teaching fellowship, so he would be able, in effect, to go tuition free for the time it took him to get his doctorate in return for teaching these classes of undergraduates.
Okay, that makes sense. And now, from what I understand, right before the crimes happened or around that time period, he was potentially going to lose his status at the university and maybe lose his spot in the program and everything else. Can we go into that?
Sure. Once Bryan Kohberger gets out to Washington State University, how does he interact with the students in the graduate program and also the students in the sections that he's teaching? The students in Washington State University, the fellow graduate students, saw him as very bright, someone who wanted to prove in every class that he was the brightest person in the room. But they also had difficulties dealing with him. He wasn't very communicative. The woman with whom he shared a graduate office with believes, this is her theory, that he tore down a gay rights poster that had been on the door, a rainbow sign. She found him very odd, very difficult to communicate with. He had a sort of girlfriend there. I think they were more friends than girlfriends, and she had just come to Washington State University from Korea. Her English wasn't very good. She said that Kohberger treated her with a sort of disdain, but she also said in interviews that she felt she wasn't good enough for Kohberger because her English wasn't proficient, and she thought he looked down on her. As for the students that he taught, they did not like the experience. They said he would taunt them. He was very demanding, and he would single out women students for criticism. One student even complained, one female student, that he walked her to her car or sort of ambushed her at the car, and she felt very threatened by this encounter, and she reported it to the administration. Another, the woman who was his girlfriend, she had her jewelry that she had talked about, and it was sort of stolen. The jewelry was not of any great monetary value, but it had commercial affection for her, and she had only told about it to Kohberger, and she always suspected that he had taken this. But before her suspicions grew about Kohberger, she approached him to install a camera in a room that could be checked by computer, and Kohberger had this camera downloaded to his computer, and he could literally uh, look into her room at all times. And in retrospect, she was very spooked by that. While he was doing this, while he was teaching the sections, the professor who was in charge of him, who was a former lawyer, who was a prosecutor and now was teaching criminal justice at Washington State, he did not like his interactions with Kohberger. He would give what he thought was constructive criticism to Kohberger, and Kohberger would explode. The conversations between them would become very vitriolic. So this professor, realizing that he might have a situation on his hands, began keeping meticulous notes. At 3 different occasions, he goes to the dean of the department and the department head, sharing his complaints for Kohberger. Twice they bring him in, Kohberger, and they say, in effect, you've got to get your act together. This isn't working out, or we're going to take your teaching fellowship away. On the third time they bring him in, they tell him, well, you've made some progress. Things seem to be working. Maybe this can work out. And Kohberger's convinced that he's going to be coming back for the term that begins on January 1st or so. However, during that time, the interaction between him and the student, that he walks to the car, happens, and she reports it to the administration, and the administration says enough. And they send Kohberger a letter on approximately December 13th, which is a month after the murders took place, and they say, we will not be renewing your fellowship. As Kohberger told his family members, he thought he was going to be able to get a hearing, that he would be able to come back, and he eventually convinced them to give him one more chance.
Did he ever get that letter, or was that delivered to his place when he was on the road to Pennsylvania?
Well, what's interesting is that he was going home for Christmas break, and he never received that letter. He never received the hard copy of that letter, and it wasn't sent by, as best as I've been able to discover, it was never sent by email.
Okay. Interesting. Now, a lot of weird stuff with that, and you cover it really well in the book. Like, it seemed like some stovepiping was going on between the FBI and the local police, mostly the FBI, stovepiping what they have. And from what I understand, they had the DNA match through genetic research or genealogical research for several days before they revealed this to the locals. Is that correct?
Right. What the chronology of what happened was this: they discovered this knife sheath at the scene of the crime in the bed sheets of Maddie Mogen, one of the young women who was killed. On the knife sheath, which they send to the Idaho State Crime Laboratory, they discover a bit of touch DNA on the button snap. They run this through the computers of known criminals, nothing. So they need to see what they can do with this. They decide to send it to a firm in Houston, Texas called Othram, which has been in the forefront of investigative genetic genealogy. That's using genealogy to build out family trees to see who this could belong to. They've used it in cold cases largely to identify victims of crimes who've been unknown. Who are these people?
Like Golden State Killer, correct?
Exactly. And they go through the Othram, and they can't get anywhere with it, really. They put through all their things, and they think perhaps it might be tied to 4 brothers, and they even contact one of these 4 brothers, and the brother says, no, I don't want to be involved in any research into a crime. So the FBI decides to take over. They send it to the FBI crime laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, where the FBI headquarters is and research facilities are. They are able to identify it, to build it out through a genealogical website. However, what the FBI does is they access websites that they're prohibited from accessing. In other words, when you sign up for some sites like 23andMe to see who your ancestors are, you are signing an agreement that says that this information will not be given out to law enforcement. Law enforcement, however, in this case, said, "Well, that agreement is moot. We didn't need, in our zeal to get this guy. Who knows? He's out there. He might kill again. We need to get to the bottom of this." They make this connection. However, when they make this connection, according to the sources I've talked with, and the FBI denies this for the record, they disagree with me. We should make that clear. They do not tell the Moscow police task force that's leading this investigation, and they begin to follow Kohberger as he's leaving home for Christmas vacation with his father, who's come out, the 68-year-old father, to make the trip back with him across country from Washington State to Pennsylvania.
Which is really unusual, isn't it? I mean, how often does that happen? A dad
Well,
flying out to.
it's even more unusual, and you realize the father, realize I'm dealing with a very problematic young man, because before that, he drove out across country with his son in August when the son was registering for classes. The son is, not a kid. He's 28 years old. He's a teaching assistant, but the father felt that he needed to I would assume, to watch over this young man. And as soon as his father gets there, when the first thing he does, he goes to a neighbor, Chris Martinez, and says, my son has a hard time making friends. Would you watch out for him? I'd appreciate it. And then he comes out again, 5 months later, to make the trip across country with his son again. And he's 68 years old, money's short, he's been bankrupt twice. And yet he's doing this because he's concerned about his son. And when he's making this trip, they're driving 4 days across America. They're sitting shoulder to shoulder in a white Hyundai Elantra. And every police officer in the country is on the lookout for this white Hyundai Elantra. And the father has to know, here I've got my problematic son. He's been in a mood since I've arrived back in Washington State. I'm in a white Hyundai Elantra, which is just the car that people are looking for. And my son happens to live 9 miles away from where these quadruple murders occurred. He's beginning to have suspicions. And while all this is happening, adding to the intensity and the drama of the situation, as Kohberger and the father are driving across country while they're in Kansas, they're stopped not once, but twice by the Indiana State Police, sirens flashing, pulling them over to the side of the road. Ostensibly, it's just a traffic violation, but the father has to, again, his suspicions have to realize. And in the course of this entire journey across America, according to the people I've spoken with, Kohberger's father is getting closer and closer and closer to the realization that his son might be a monster. However, he can't go there just yet. It's too large a leap for him. He's still the father of this young man, and he can't admit to himself that his son might very well be the murderer of 4 college students.
Hello. How you doing? How y'all doing today? Good, good. Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van. Pulled you over for tailgating.
Wow. And then one other thing is, I think there was a 15-hour delay before they were even following him, because he changed the route by going south, and nobody expected him to go south.
What disturbed the father originally, the father had plotted out this route. They had planned it around Thanksgiving. They would take a direct line. It's the shortest distance between 2 points.
Sure.
But instead, they go south through Colorado to maybe avoid people and into snow country, and that made the father worried. But Kohberger, I believe, suspected he might be followed, and he was trying to take a circuitous route.
You see, and that such a strange guy on that. Look, can we go to that night? Because I'm guessing you have theories as to what exactly happened.
Sure.
Is your theory that he was really there for Maddie, that Maddie was his probably intended victim, and possibly because she looked like Kim Keneally, I think it is, who was
Well,
like rejected him as a middle schooler.
I'm not sure it goes back that far, but here's what I think happened on that night. On the night, November 13th, at approximately 3 a.m., a white car, which we now know is Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra, drives by the residence on King Road, not once, not twice at 3 a.m., but three times, and each time he drives off. Some people have said he was stalking the house. I say that wasn't the case. I say he was trying to find the will, trying to make the movement to become the monster he saw in his mind that he wanted to be. If he were stalking the house, he would have realized that there were four cars parked in front. The house was full of people, and he would have seen the DoorDash driver who makes a 4 a.m. a delivery of food to one of the young women in the house. So I think he was locked in his own mindset. And when he finally comes back on the fourth loop by the house, he finds the will. I imagine it took the strength of a Hercules to turn off the engine of that Hyundai and then walk out of the car with his knife sheath in his hand, black mask over his face, walk down this icy slope, go to a side kitchen door, which is left open. And he goes in through the sliding kitchen door and enters the house. He enters the house on the second floor. There are two bedrooms on the second floor. Each have students in them. If he was just setting out to kill anyone, he could have gone immediately into either of those bedrooms. Instead, he walks up a narrow staircase and turns to his left, which is Maddie Mogan's bedroom. Maddie Mogan was a waitress at the Mad Greek restaurant in downtown Moscow. It was some place that Kohberger, who was a vegan, went to. They had a sort of vegan pizza. Did he ever speak with her? No one knows, but he was a man to whom obsessions come easily. And there was, I believe, something about her blonde, good looks, her exuberance that excited something in him and also made him realize that he would perpetually be the outsider to that sort of world of easy communication, of people dating, of people really experiencing life on a level that he could never experience it. And his resentment towards her is a symbol of all that was not part of his narrow, restricted world, just sent him into a rage, and he planned this murder to kill her. Once he got into her bedroom, he saw, to his surprise, that another young woman was there. Kaylee was there. They both had been out drinking that night. She had just crashed in Maddie's bed. They had spent a long time calling Kaylee's boyfriend. Both of them, between them, they made 11 calls after 2:30 in the morning to him, and he didn't answer. And so they just crashed there. Now Kohberger has to kill two young women, which he didn't intend to. He kills Maddie first. Kaylee is fighting back, according to the wounds and her father's comments, like a tiger. He literally punches her so hard he breaks bones in her face. It's a very brutal attack, but he kills her too. As he's walking down the steps, leaving that room, one of the young women on the second floor, Zana, sees him. He chases her, kills her, and then he goes over to the bed where her boyfriend Ethan, who's been spending the night there, is sleeping. He kills him while he's still in bed, it seems now. And then he sits down, Kohberger. There is blood found on a chair, which would match the indentation of his buttocks, as that he sat down there, gathers himself for a moment, and then goes out of the room where, and this gets even weirder, he encounters another young woman. She has been awakened, Mrs. Dillon, by the noise. She stares at him and she can't
Can we
speak.
talk about that a second? Because
Sure.
does he see her, or was he just in his state and didn't see her because he chased somebody else down who saw him, but he didn't
All right.
do anything
I
with her?
believe that at this moment, when Dillon sees him, Kohberger is locked in his own armory of hate, his own irrational state. If she had spoken, if she had cried out, if she had said, "Who are you? What are you doing here? What's going on?" Any word, I think that would have pulled him out of the state he was in, and she too would have become another victim. She too would have been part of the collateral damage of his hunt to kill Maddie Mogan. But instead, she just stands there frozen, and he goes out to the kitchen door and drives off. What happens after she leaves is also confusing. This young woman, Dylan, she texts the girl downstairs on the first floor, and the girl says, "Come down here, something's going on. We don't know what's going on." And yet they wait 8 hours, 8 full hours before they call the police. And during this time, they're not sleeping. They're on the phone to friends. They're calling parents. They're going on the internet. They're going on job sites. They're going on Instagram. They're going on TikTok. I can't explain why they did this. The only thing I can hypothesize is that the moment was just too large. They didn't want to process it. It was a sort of cognitive dissonance. They didn't want
Like
to
a shock.
It was really, to some degree, yes. Or but it is one of the mysteries in this case. And since it won't be coming to trial, and since these two young survivors will not have to testify, we will probably never know unless one of them or both of them decide to speak out.
There are a lot of people extremely upset that the plea deal was made. A lot of people think that it was a open and shut case, or it seemed like it was, that there was plenty of evidence to put him away or to get the death penalty. And they're kind of confused. Was the plea arranged because of those two survivors, possibly to prevent them from having to testify or being victimized further? I'm just curious why.
I don't think so. Here's my reporting, what I found on the plea deal, and the timing of it is just very problematic too. 2 weeks before the plea deal, the prosecution has two large legal victories. They're able to throw out the alternate perpetrator theory. The judge says the names you've introduced are just gossip, really. You can't bring them into a court. You can't say there are alternate perpetrators. And they also had an alibi theory. The alibi was that Kohberger, on the time when the murders occurred, had been in a wilderness park at 4 a.m. on a cloudy, freezing night, stargazing. And the judge looked at that alibi and said, quote, "That alibi is not an alibi." So they now no longer had an alibi defense. And yet the prosecution decides to say, okay, let's take a plea deal. How did that come about? Kohberger's team, early on, I believe, according to the reporting I've done, began to realize that this case was lost. And they approached Kohberger and said, "Look, we need to save your life. This is really important. We want you to take a plea deal." Kohberger thought about it, reached out and called his 65-year-old mother, Marianne, and she said, "No, don't take a plea deal." I think on one level, she still believed in his innocence. Maybe she thought, or he could win a trial, but whatever reason, they don't take the plea deal. Then 2 weeks ago, after the Kohberger team lost these sort of Hail Mary passes that they tried to throw, that they were dropped, the judge said, no alibi, no alternate perpetrators. Ann Taylor, Kohberger's lead legal aid lawyer, goes to him again and says, "We really got to do something because you're going to face a firing squad." That's how they inflict the death penalty in Idaho. That's a state law. So Kohberger calls his mother again. And now they have to think about something. In May, Dateline, a 2-hour episode, which I was a part of, reveals a 54-minute call that Kohberger made to a phone registered to his father less than 2 hours after the murder. That phone call is now public knowledge. No one knows except Kohberger and whomever he spoke with what was said on that phone call. However, my reporting has indicated that he spoke largely with his mother. And it seems that Kohberger's parents now that this phone call had been announced, realized that they were going to have to explain what was said on this phone call uh, in the aftermath of those murders. And that possibly might put them in legal jeopardy. They also now confronted for the first time that Kohberger's father would be asked on the stand under oath about what was said as they sat shoulder to shoulder in that Hyundai as it made its way across America. And he too would be in legal jeopardy. So when this was explained to Bryan Kohberger, he didn't feel any sort of, as it was explained to me, any sort of guilt or remorse for his parents. That's too rational a response, but he did feel a sense, something akin to responsibility, and that he did not want to put, after all that this was happening, and put them into a situation that could jeopardize their own legal standings. And also, here was an opportunity to save his own life from a firing squad. So he told Ann Taylor, okay, let's see if we can get a plea deal. Ann Taylor goes to the defense. And the defense, and this is what is even more surprising and more arguably.
You mean prosecution?
Right, the prosecution, yes, decides to take it. Why do they decide to take it? Well, again, there's a gag order going on. Only Bill Thompson, the lead prosecutor, knows for sure. But I would suggest, on one level, every veteran prosecutor knows that anytime you go into the courtroom, you're throwing dice. You never know how it's going to turn out. You never know what kind of doubts one juror is going to have. But I think it was something more fundamental than that. My belief is that all along, honorable men in Idaho have been trying to get this case over with, to move on from it. I mean, look at the history. First, we had the first judge in the case, Judge John Judge, was handling it in Moscow. He was ready to move it to Boise, where the trial was going to take place. And as soon as it moved to Boise, he could have followed it there. He said, enough already. I'm retiring from the bench. He had enough of this sorrowful, tragic tale. Then there was the police chief, James Fry. As soon as he caught his man, he wept on TV. And then not long after that, he retired from the Moscow force. He's now working as a police chief in a town in Washington state. He too wanted to get away from all this. Even Judge Hippler, who took over the case, on his first day in the courtroom, he said, I'd like to say I'm happy to be here, but why begin with an untruth? He too, did not have much enthusiasm for this case. And you can go back to the university at Idaho. They own the house where the murders took place on King Road.
CBS affiliate KREM 2 News in Spokane reports the knockdown of the house, guarded by security for over 13 months now, marked a significant but emotional moment for the victims' families and the wider University of Idaho community.
They couldn't wait to demolish it. They just tore it down. They believed that people would forget. Out of sight would be out of mind. And I think ultimately the prosecutor, Bill Thompson, said, let's just move on. The state needs to move on, get this over with. We will send them to prison for life. We won't get the answers, but enough already. And he just did not have the will, I believe, or the appetite to fight this out in the courtroom, which was going to be a 3-month trial.
Can we talk about that? There was no allocution. And that, I think, is very frustrating for a lot of people, because people would like to hear him in his own words say, I did this, this is this, and this. As an example, Dennis Rader, BTK, I don't know if you remember, but when he put in his plea, he very chillingly, I hate to say it, but he just described, I faked on the door and walked through every single thing that he did. Is the law different in Idaho? How is it he could just say, yes, yes, no, no, guilty, guilty?
Kohberger is going to be sentenced on July 23rd, about 10, 15 days or so from now. He is going to have to give some answers to questions by the judge, Judge Hippler. However, these can be just terse answers, terse explanations. The judge can say, if he decides this isn't good enough, or he can go along with this. At this stage, I think they've agreed to allow Kohberger just to move on, go off to prison. Once he's in prison, interesting enough, Kohberger always wanted to be this forensic psychologist. While he was in graduate school, he had set a list of questions out to prisoners. Why did you commit the crime? How did you plan it? What were you thinking? How did you get away? Well, these are precisely the questions that I think forensic psychologists and reporters from all over the country will come to his jail cell trying to ask him. And maybe when he's bored enough after a certain number of years in jail or seeking some sort of notoriety, maybe he will answer them. But until then, we have no answers. And I don't think the state of Idaho is eager for the people, the taxpayers, who put up close to $4 million to fund this case so far, to get answers. Why do I say that? Because there's still a gag order in effect. That gag order, which was put into effect after Kohberger was first apprehended, could have been lifted once he pled. It could have made it possible for reporters to talk to prosecutors, to lawmen involved in the case. But no, the judge and the prosecution and the defense all wanted it to stay in effect. They want to have this thing be quiet. They want to have this move on. They want to have it just like the murder house, which was bulldozed. They want this to be bulldozed over too. They think people will, in time, will heal all wounds and people will forget. But the reality is there are only victims in this story. There are no survivors. And the families will be living with this in their own sort of life sentence for as long as they're on this planet. The town of Moscow, the university, everyone this will be part of their history.
Now, you've written many books, and you also write for like New York Times, New York Post, Daily Mail, on down the line. And I'm assuming, have investigated other crimes or covered other crimes in the past. Have you seen anything like this, keeping a gag order on and kind of just trying to memory hole, I guess, the whole situation?
Well, quite frankly, I've never seen anything like this. Reporters always have to dig to get stories, but this has been a deliberate attempt to keep the facts constrained. And I don't know why. At one point, while the Kohberger team is arguing for a continuance and they say they need more time to build their case, they file a motion with the court where they talk about trials are story building. And we want to build our story, and that's going to go up against the prosecution story. It's a very cynical way of looking at the American justice system. And I believe it's part of the responsibility of the press to not build stories, but to build factual accounts of what happened. And that's what they seem to be preventing us from doing.
Is there any chance now, I don't know, because it's a state case, if there's any equivalency of like FOIAs and things like that could be on the state level saying, hey, he's locked up, it's a guilty plea, we want to see the record now. We want to see.
To the best of my knowledge, one has to see the pretrial work of either the defense or the prosecution. I think that will be locked away forever. I think what we can hope for is that maybe sometime down the line, the police investigators, FBI investigators might want to tell their story. They might want to share it. They might be looking to earn retirement money. And maybe Kohberger, once he's in jail, will want to speak.
Is it possible, because there are a lot of people dissatisfied with the outcome in terms of just life in prison, whatever, that the feds could take an interest, the Justice Department could take an interest? And I bring up specifically because Luigi Mangione, they are going after him federally on the premise of stalking, crossing the state lines with a weapon and stalking, and then that angled them in to be able to do a federal charge on murder.
I think it's possible. I don't know if the Trump administration has the appetite or to focus their energies on this case too. But it certainly is a possibility. But I don't know if the Attorney General Bondi will want to go further with it.
One thing I wanted to ask you about that I found so interesting and so really incriminating was how he was collecting all of his personal items and putting it in Ziploc bags or something like that, and
Yep.
disposing of them in the trash cans all over
I
the
mean,
neighborhood.
the night of his arrest was filled with high drama. Here, the police have been following him for 4 days while he's back home in Pennsylvania. His family lives in a small house that's in a sort of gated community in the Poconos. And at approximately 1 a.m., when the police decide they've made this match, that they want the genetic match, they've taken a Q-tip out of the garbage a day earlier, and it matches the DNA on the knife sheath, or that belongs to the father. The Q-tip on the DNA belongs to the father of the person on the knife sheath. So they assume they're going to arrest Kohberger. They send a helicopter above the house at 1 a.m. The motors are rotating. Kohberger is being watched by a sniper who has him in the crosshairs of the sniper rifle, and he sees Kohberger run from the kitchen to the garage. They see the lights of the car go on in the garage. Perhaps he's looking for something. Perhaps he's going to try to make an escape. A Bearcat, which is an assault vehicle the police use, lumbers up the driveway. They finally announce, we're coming in, we're going to make an arrest. They bash down the door, they smash through windows, they take his 60 some odd year old parents, tie them up with zip tags around their wrists. They take Kohberger off the police car in front. Kohberger, once he gets into the police car, does two things. First, he says to the cop in the car, "Is anyone else going to be arrested? And does that mean his parents, or are there other suspects?" We'll never get the answer to that because it won't be a trial. And then he tells the cop, "I'm a criminology student, and maybe when this is all resolved, we could go meet for a cup of coffee."
One thing that you wrote about in the book, and I didn't quite know if it happened. Did the police go and find his detritus in the other trash cans in the neighborhood, or were they only grabbing it from his trash can? They didn't realize, because I know the sister said he was putting in other trash cans. I didn't know if the police actually had collected those.
The police did not go to a neighbor's trash can, and that's why they didn't get his DNA. They went to the Kohberger trash can, and that's where they were able to get the Q-tip that had the father's DNA on it, which they were able to match to the family tree that Kohberger led to Kohberger. They did not get Kohberger's DNA until after he was officially arrested.
I kind of feel sorry for his family. I really do in a lot of ways. Like his sister, she probably had to know. I mean, wasn't her phone getting stolen? They got him in trouble with the law
And she was a
before.
psychologist. She's a family psychologist. At one point, according to the reporting I was doing, the sister confronts the father. This is during Christmas vacation. And she's seen her brother putting his garbage into plastic Ziploc bags. She's seen him obsessively cleaning his car. And she knows where he lived, 9 miles from the murders. They're looking for a white Hyundai. This is a white Hyundai he's obsessively cleaning. And she said that, in effect, as reported to me, we might have a problem here with Bryan. And the father looks at her and just walks away. He can't say a word. He can't deal with this moment. Again, it's just too large.
It had to be. Well, I'm glad that he's been caught and he has confessed now. There are people out there, it's just bonkers, that are saying, "Oh no, he didn't do it. Oh no, it was a setup. Oh no, it was this and that." And I'm going to have to say, look, he confessed. He said it. He did it.
Not only did he confess, but you have his DNA. You have a car that matches his at the crime scene. You have him ordering a knife from Amazon being sent to his house. You have him going after the murders, trying to buy another knife, since the murder weapon has been hidden somewhere, which we'll never know unless he decides to confess. But there's too much evidence that puts him in the center of this circle of guilt.
As a matter of fact, you wrote an article on this for the New York Post that, Bryan Kohberger fancied himself a criminal mastermind. Why do he make so many dumb mistakes? Now, is this a case, in your theory, Do you think we are looking at a budding serial killer? Like, if he pulled this off, this was the first one, but he's sloppiest because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing the first time. Are
Well,
we fortunate that we caught this guy
well,
relatively early?
you're asking two questions. First, let's look at his mistakes. If Bryan Kohberger had not left that knife sheath behind, if there had only been one young woman in that room and not two, he then probably would have taken the knife sheath with him and snuck out of the house. Then there would have been no DNA, and that it was the DNA that was the tip that leads to everything else. They might never have caught him. If they had never caught him, I believe, and again, I'm just hypothecating, this is just my theory, when he was ordering another knife from looking on Amazon to order another knife, he did not order it, but he was looking at it. They have his search history. I think he was getting preparing to kill again. I think it was inevitable that he would have killed again. I think he would have felt such a sense of completeness, of satisfaction, of vindication of the choices he had made, that he had gotten away with it, that he would have done it again.
That makes a lot of sense. And one of the people that he was fascinated with, from what I understand, was Ted Bundy. That he had watched some stuff on Ted Bundy and was very, very interested in this case. Is it possible, as speculated with Ted Bundy, like he could have been screwing up subconsciously in order to get himself caught? And I'll give you an example. I read a book on Ted Bundy 20 plus years ago or whatever, and it was by Anne Rule, who knew him, and she had theorized that Ted Bundy, when he escaped out of that Colorado courthouse, at the window, very dramatic stuff, he didn't just go to another state where they didn't have a death penalty, because he was killing people in states where they didn't have the death penalty, but he winds up going to Florida, where they most assuredly were going to execute him if he was caught. And her theory was that maybe it was some sort of self-sabotage. Kohberger, like with trying to use a gift card to buy something on Amazon and then trying to erase your history, he in many ways would have been better off if he just bought the knife and never erased anything, right? Because many people buy a K-bar knife.
I mean, Kohberger made many mistakes that were traceable after he left the knife sheath behind. If he hadn't left the knife sheath behind, one question with the knife sheath, which I'd like to know the answer to, and who knows if we'll ever get it, did he leave it behind on purpose? So almost as a calling card, because there's only like a minute bit of touch DNA on it, on the button snap. Clearly, he had cleaned the knife sheath at one point, and yet he had missed this one little minutia, this one little minute speck. Maybe he wanted people to leave that as his symbol. We'll never know. Again, all these questions are out there after nearly 3 years of the state looking into this case, building this case, tracking this man down, spending close to $4 million. We're still left with questions. They have a conviction. They were able to send this man to jail for his life, for 4 consecutive life sentences, but we won't have the satisfaction, and the families, more importantly, won't have the satisfaction of knowing why he picked my children, why he decided on that night to kill my son or daughter.
That's horrible. Well, Howard, I want to wrap things up, and what I like to always do, if possible, is to ask, what is the one question that I should have asked you, but I neglected to?
Maybe. I mean, you covered the case sort of dramatically and I think extensively. Would be, how did I get into it? What me out there? And the reality was, just within a week after it happened, I was sitting around the Thanksgiving table and people starting about this case. And I had just come back from studying at Oxford, England. I was studying something completely different, Russian politics. I had just finished a book. I'd been a reporter. I'd been involved in a lot of different things. And here was this case that was filled with mysteries. At this point, there wasn't a suspect. There wasn't a clue about why the case had happened, no motive. And I thought, well, maybe I should go out there instead of being in a library where I'd spent the past several months up in Oxford, England, digging into very arcane Russian matters. I should call Graydon Carter, who was my editor, and say, how about I get on a plane and look into this? And I originally went out there not simply to write about this case, but thinking, well, maybe I could try to solve the mystery. Maybe I could try to put the pieces in the puzzle together. And that's how I began.
How has the experience been for you?
Well, it's been an intense experience. And what most confounding and unexpected part of it is the animosity you get anytime you share one of your opinions. I mean, as I said, I've been a reporter for a lot of years. This is my 17th book. I've been doing these things for a while now, and yet I've never gotten death threats before. Here I'm covering a case about a murderer, and people who don't like what I say or don't like my opinions on the case, they threaten me, they threaten my publisher. My publicist from the publisher had to get the cops to guard her house for over a week. And I don't understand how people's mindsets would go off in such directions, why things have become so dangerous in America to share thoughts for reporters to go out there and try to dig into events.
I hate to tell you, but welcome to true crime. I've covered a little bit here and there, like the OJ stuff and Green River, not Green River, Zodiac, but for some reason, and I think it'd be worth studying, there is a almost psychosis. I don't know what it would be, but people getting involved with true crime start to try to own it, like it's their story, and whatever their pet theory is or anything else, how dare you go against it? And I'm just telling you, like Son of Sam, Community, oh my God, there's huge fights there. There's fights over Manson, what happened. There's fights over OJ and what happened. And I think you may have accidentally stumbled into that because you're just doing
I
research.
think you're 100% correct. It's been a very vituperative experience. I mean, such rancor on the internet for a reporter trying to do his job. You're digging into a story and you get these personal attacks. It didn't stop me from going ahead, from continuing to write about it. I have two pieces coming out this week about the case and the aftermath of the settlement. But I'm just surprised by the intensity of people's reaction. And for my next book, I've agreed to do something completely different, and I'll be glad to go off in that direction.
Probably a great idea. Now, Howard, thank you so much. And folks, again, the book is When the Night Comes Falling, the definitive true crime investigation into the Idaho student murders. There's a link down below in the description. Please check it out. It does help him a lot. And the more rapidly you order them, the quicker it drives it up the charts and it helps it keep it in a bestseller state. So, Howard, thank you so much.
Thank you, and a pleasure speaking with you.